Okay, guys, so we are on. Thank you so much for joining us for today's class. I am happy to introduce our guest speaker for the day, Tony Guadagnolo. Tony runs Anthony Creative. He has 40 years in advertising before shifting to Letterpress. He curates the Texas Border Relay Poster Collective and the 20 for 20 Poster Collective, and uses his wealth of advertising knowledge in his creative pursuits in Letterpress. So Tony, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you, Dory. I appreciate it. I'm humbled to be before you all, and some really dear friends of mine out there, and so I'll try to keep this very short about me so that it's at least interesting. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to talk just a little bit about me and a little bit about the transition from advertising into letterpress. So I've got a little, and what we're going to do is I got a little slideshow here that will go really fast. There's no vacation pictures in there. And then I'm going to show the SP20 poster collective, the 20 for 20 that's going on right now. And then I'll talk a little bit about the Texas Border Relay, which included a page border set from the APA Ways Goose auction back in, I think it's 2018 up in Denver. And so I think a little bit about me. I'm a native Texan. I live in Arlington, Texas. I'm married, have 2 sons and 2 beautiful daughter-in-laws, and 1 very handsome and talented 1-month-old grandson, and very, very proud of him. So Dory, if we go to the laptop, I think we'll start with that. And we'll just go to that first screen there, and then I can control it here. Oh, and then if we have time, we're going to demo a poster lockup using both the Vandercooks that I have. Same form, or 2 different forms, running an oversized sheet, creating a poster. So that'll be fun. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen here. Okay, so a little bit about how I got started in 1980. I graduated from college and been in agencies and or design studios since then. In one form or another, Anthony Creative has been in existence for 33 years. And primarily, I moved right into corporate work, almost right out of school. Blue chip accounts. I worked for IBM and American Airlines accounts, Coca-Cola, and other brands across the U.S. And I was just doing everyday ad man work, right? You guys all know what that is. It's creative and production, copywriting, and taking out the trash. You got to do whatever it takes to get the job done. Because back then, I had a slightly smaller group that I was working with, but eventually I settled into it was just me by myself. And so what the next slide is going to be, some of you may recognize. So primarily what I worked on most recently for the largest account that I had was a luxury home publication. And okay, so on the left there is the Grand V is the name of this publication. I was really involved from the very start on its generating content, the editorial, and just the overall look at the piece. And it's primarily, as you would imagine, it's targeted to luxury home buyers and sellers, homes $750,000 and above. Was the minimum limit that this was on there, and they featured international properties and from obviously all over the world, which is international. But I thought I would just kind of walk you through some of the things that it took to actually produce this. The covers were actually printed sheet fed and then combined with the body on the web. And what you're seeing there in that top left is the proofing station, and the books printed in 32-page forms. And so the most stressful time in my life is those 4 days that it took to produce this book, because right next to it you can see a 2-story printer printing 6,000 impressions per hour, and that thing does not slow down. It just, you're making color changes on the fly, and thankfully there's an ink monitor in the next monitor station there in the next slide. And the pressman, if I want the magenta up overall 10 points, then he can do that from all right there. But the press is actually right behind you, so it's incredibly noisy and incredibly frantic. There are people running all over the place because they're catching everything when it comes off the end of the press. You got a guy stacking it and all this kind of stuff. So it's a really interesting but really stressful time. And so the lower left there, that some of you may recognize that as a printing plate. I think that's the magenta plate for the cover. And I just put that in there so you can see just that piece of it. I'm sure some of you have seen those many times before. The middle one on the bottom is a paper jam, right? So it was actually a paper break, and that creates all kind of havoc in production. But I thought it was a funny image, not for me, but for them. And then the next one over there are all of the forms loaded up and over in bindery. And this kind of work turned me into a firefighter, because it became what was the hottest issue, and then how was I going to fix it? And you'll see if we go to the next slide. This is kind of the progression as I look back on my career. The CEO at the first agency that I went to, we were preparing for a big pitch to a customer, and my perspective was this customer was really pretty low key, based on in spite of all the comps and all the renderings and all the work that we were doing to actually land the account. And he looked at me and said this. He said, "There's no such thing as overkill," and that's kind of followed me in my work and in my kind of my work ethic and kind of the way I approach business. And what that means to me is that I never said no to any job. I never said no really to, I said no to a bunch of budgets, but I never said no to, "Well, can you do that, Tony?" And it was always, "Well, yeah, I can do that." And so I became a yes man, a firebrander, and I never said no. I always found a way to get it done for my client. We just looked at the Grand V cover. Many times it was being exterior. That was a very rare interior that we saw previously. There were a couple of times when we would always shoot 6 months ahead. No, I'm sorry, 3 months ahead. So it would be December, and we'd be shooting the spring, which in Texas sometimes is not all that bad. But by and large, I would always have to go to the nursery and buy enough plants and mulch and basically redo the front of these big, huge luxury homes so we could show up and shoot it. And so the firebrander in me turned firefighter. And so I really lost my creativity during this time. And it was really they knew I could do the work, and they knew I would do anything. And so it was much less about creativity and more about getting the job done, which paid the bills really nicely. But there was that void in my kind of in my creative soul, if you will. And then in the fall of 2014 at the Dallas Art Guild, I took a letterpress class just on a whim. I had bought lots of letterpress in my career, but never really knew anything about it. And after the first pull on that C&P pilot, I was just my heart rate went down. My blood pressure was a little bit more normal, and it was a beautiful thing. It was a beautiful thing. And so my instructor told me about Brayer Press and the APA, and then I began to meet creatives, and I'm both on. It was interesting about letterpress because you find the creatives and the craftsmen. You have the people that come from my side who are very astute on the art end, understand the balance, composition, all those elements of design. And then you have the guys that have been doing letterpress utilitarian like, right? It was their job to get the job out to print on these incredible presses. So I find it an interesting mix of people, and they're both necessary, both essential to the life of letterpress, I think. the craft will go on as long as both of those will exist, because it's the craftsmen, the old guys. It's I say old guys like me. It's those guys who made a living from letterpress, who are really instilling the future of it to the younger group, who are much more creative. Still desire to be craftsmen, but it's different when you're doing it for art's sake and production's sake, like Jason at Genghis Kern. You know, they have a great shop there, but incredibly talented creative wise. So I'm 4 years into part-time letterpress, if you will. On the creative side, I still have a couple of clients that are hanging on that I still do creative work for. And so I'd like to tell you about a couple of collectives that I started. First one I'll talk about is the SP20 poster collective, which I started in January this year. And this was aimed at owners or operators of Vandercook SP20s. And the theme was the jazz age, 100 years ago. An incredible time for music and change in the country. But it seemed appropriate for SP20s to gather and develop the scope. I developed scope work in January, and people are printing right now. It's not due till the end of this year. And maybe we'll do a recap for that. And then on the next slide, Paul Moxon helped me identify, I think he sent me 60 people who were associated with an SP20, and 26 of them graciously agreed to be contributing creatives to this. And as you can see, is a large cluster in the United States, some Canadians, one lady over in Scotland, and somebody down in Australia. So it started out really fun. We've been sharing jazz tunes and different things related to the poster collective. So that's been a fun thing to look at. Additionally, the theme was open-ended. It was there was a size requirement, no color requirement, but the single common element that it all have is the serial number from the SP20 that they printed on. And so that'll be fun to see, kind of track that and see where that has been. And then as thank yous, I created these manacles on my laser, thanks to Scott Moore, who helped coach me with that. And I sent everybody one of those to, not to necessarily print with on the poster, but just to have in their cabinet or so. So the 5-digit serial number was the only common thing, and it's going to be a fun project to take a look at. And then prior to that, I was in, like I said, the APA, I think it was 2018, up in Denver, and there was an auction by a man whose last name was Grisenti, and he had an incredible collection of letterpress equipment and type and borders and just everything. Well, I acquired a border set that was that he had, and David Shields has dated it to about 1880. And so I came back, and I just could not keep that to myself. So this was my very first time. I reached out to a couple of folks, Casey and Virgil for sure, and they agreed to do it. And so I came up with just an overall Texana theme, and the requirement was that you have to use at least one of the border pieces, or all. And so if you take a look at this slide right here, so the border set came to me in a cigar box. You can see that in the lower left. And I made a handmade box for it that had the logo that I developed for the collective, and it traveled the state in that box, and then that box was in another box, obviously. And then there on the right is a reprint from the original broadside, a very rare broadside. This reprint was done in 2013, and I think Dave Pete had the original one, and somebody scanned it. You see there's some pieces there that are outlined by that pink dashed box there. Those were the elements that there were 42 pieces in a random sorting of those four, and so those went out from me, and the traveled 1,700 miles in this Texas trail, if you will. And so next, we're going to take a look at, so there were 12 creatives and 11 studios involved, and I'm going to run through the first 8 real quickly, just so you can take a look. And at the end, I'm going to talk about mine, and then I've invited some good friends of mine, Virgil Scott and Casey McGarr, and they're going to talk about their approach to the border collective and using that border. So this is Casey's, and this is his. You'll see his in a little more detail later, and he can talk about that. So Casey actually started the relay off. He was the first guy out of the chute, and this is some of the things. This is how he treated it. Next was Virgil and his lovely wife Kim. They worked on FAS Studio 204 here in Arlington. Then it went to a guy. This is Fernando at Elephant Press. This is how he handled it. Lily Smith Kirkley, she's also in Dallas. Our friend David Wolski up at UNT in Denton, Texas. This is Dirk Fowler. He's educator, professor, design guy out of Texas Tech, which is out in Lubbock, Texas. This was a lady down in San Antonio that was part of the Southwest School of Art down there, Leo Lee. This is a couple out of Houston, workhorse printer, Jennifer and John. They nice Latino flavor here. Kevin Auer, he's also a educator, professor, teaches down at the University of Houston in Victoria, Texas. This is an interesting thing. I'd love to show you that it's actually in there. He printed both sides of the sheet, and then he printed enough to die cut a design out of the top sheet. And so it's actually you can look at it 4 different ways. It's a pretty innovative way to do that. This is Virginia Green. She's down in Baylor, down in Waco, Texas. She has a studio down there, educator as well. And then this is mine. So I'm going to talk about mine real quick, and then Casey, you can go next, and then Virgil, you can finish up. So my the Texana motif that we all were charged with in Texas, there's a thing called big hat, no cattle, and that refers to somebody who talks big but doesn't have much to back it up with. And so I almost immediately saw this in my mind when I was looking at the border and kind of researching a little bit about what I was going to do. And so you can see I used some really large Gothic, those were 8-inch letters that I've kind of got an overlapping kind of design there. I laser cut both the cowboy and the, you can see there's a background there. There's a cow skull up at the top, and then there's the word Texas with a couple of stars there on the side there. All 3 of those were cut, and it was a really fun project for me, not only on the curating part, but also on the design part. This was really the first time that I had really any exposure to working with another group of creatives to put together something like that, and it was very rewarding for me. I made some good friends and learned a lot in the process, as you do, because you always have those opportunities to talk with other creatives and troubleshoot, and it was a really enjoyable collaborative for sure. Okay, so let me tell you a little about Casey McGarr. And Casey is, hey, you know what, Dory? I think we'll switch over to the iPad real quick.
Okay.
Can you do that?
I can. Do you want me to turn off the computer screen, Tony?
Let me see what I have left on there. Yeah, you can do that. So after this, we're gonna talk about dueling Vandercooks and look at my wood type and borders if that's interesting to anybody. But yeah, you could probably go ahead and do that and then just turn the iPad on.
You got it. So again, guys, if you'd like to focus on the iPad, if you will double click the icon that says Tony's iPad Tony, it's got a white mark back, and that'll pin it in your view.
Is it?
Yep, you're all set, Tony.
Okay. Okay, I still see you, but I'm assuming everybody can see. Can everybody see this right here?
Mm-hmm. We're
Do
seeing
you see the wood border?
Yes.
Yes.
We're all set, Tony.
Okay, all right. So before I introduce Casey, I thought I'd show you the actual box. So it traveled the state in this box right here, like I said, and everybody signed the top, and it went out, and the instructions were, you know, kind of anal about that, but I had, so that it got packed back the same way every time. I had this going like that, but you can kind of see the nature of that. Very, very, very aesthetically pleasing just to look at and to hold. So it was really a lot of fun. So just real quick, I'm going to show. We've already talked about mine. How does that look?
Great.
Okay. All right. Let me introduce Casey Mccarty to you. Good friend of mine. He runs Inky Lips Press up in McKinney, Texas. Casey is an associate professor at Texas A&M Commerce, teaching in the visual communications program, an accomplished designer, good friend, and trusted go-to for letterpress know-how. So Casey's going to talk a little bit about the relay and his poster right here. So Casey,
yeah,
thanks for coming. You're on.
Well, thanks for letting me share my experience with this. So first off, when I got the box from Tony, you know, there's specific instructions when you take the borders out, and the instructions were on the back how to put the borders back in, and it was like a puzzle that you wish. It's like a 1,000-piece puzzle. It was so hard to do, but you know, eventually I got the pieces in because the box had to close and be sent off. So anyway, opening that box and seeing all the borders that he had and just knowing the history of them all was pretty exciting to me. And I had always wanted to do and I like Texas. I'm from Texas, born in San Antonio. I've always wanted to do, and I love the cowboy and the Western look. And I've always wanted to do like a wanted poster. And so when I got it, I have no idea what I'm going to say. And so I did some research and came up and found some really nice quotes and printed, you know, you can see this, it's printed, a sun ray is printed in the background. And then I run a CNC machine. So I've learned AutoCAD and all this. So I cut the cowboy with his pistol drawn. And so that had to be, I had to name it. The good thing was Texas Gun Barrel Smith. And it was a wanted poster for him. And so I always remembered the Three Stooges, and I think they said they were Bilko and Cheatham, you know, and I think that's their attorney, their law firm, Bilko, Cheatham and Steelham or something like that. So that's how, you know, Bilko and Cheatham, for, you know, it was a proclamation for Bilko and Cheatham to capture Texas Gun Barrel Smith on this December 16th, the capture of an old Sidewinder. So I put in Sidewinder and related it to the rattlesnake. So he is such a mean guy. He is so mean he'd fight a rattler and give him the first bite. So I tried to bring some humor into it. Not, if you ever see my work ever, I've got a lot of humor in my work. I like the play on words. And so that's kind of how I did it. And it was on this day, December 16th, which, you know, that's my birthday. So if anybody wants to send me birthday wishes later on in the year, you can do that. But anyway, I had a lot of fun with it. It was having all those borders and knowing, and y'all saw all the other great posters and how they're put together. It was quite challenging. And, you know, I just wanted the simple border, but seeing everybody else's was pretty uniquely done. So I like the West, I like cowboys. And so that's pretty much the poster that I created for Tony in the border relay. Thanks.
Thank you, Casey. Next up, another really good friend of mine lives in the same hometown right here in Arlington, Virgil Scott of Studio 204. Virgil's also a professor of visual communications in the visual communications program at Texas A&M Commerce. And he also chairs and coordinates the MFA program there. Virgil's well-known creative North Texas design community, good friend and valued letterpress resource, a good guy to have coffee with. And Virgil, you want to talk about your poster and your approach?
Surely. Thanks, Tony. Howdy. Nice to meet you folks virtually. I look forward to seeing you in person someday. That would be wonderful.
Yeah.
You know, when I got this border, I too was blown away because for me, I just don't see borders like this. They're so nice and so complete. And I believe it was, I think, didn't we date it to about 1890s, Tony? Anyway, when I saw it, the first thing that came to mind was it felt to me like kind of, you know, really Americana. It almost reminded me of bunting, you know, that you would see at political events, and it felt political to me. And, you know, I think we all kind of wonder when we, you know, get wood type that's maybe 80, 100 years old or borders, it's like, you know, what has this thing said in its lifetime? Think of all the messaging that it's communicated. And so for this, I wanted to do something that was in that same era. So I started looking at things that happened in Texas about 100 years ago. And just by dumb luck, I stumbled across the fact that, you know, the women got the right to vote in 1919. And so it was actually 100 years ago from when I was doing the poster. And I found a broadside that was actually produced and taken door to door by these suffragettes, you know, to rally to get the vote. And so I reprinted that, and I used a polymer plate for that. And then all of the wood type is period wood type that would have been available around 1919, 1920. So in this case, you know, a lot of the work that I do poster work, and it's often quite, you know, contemporary looking. And for this, the border just told me that it needed to be something that was historically accurate. So anyway, that's kind of how it all happened. And like I said, it's a mixture of all the type, and the light blue is all wood type. And the copy is polymer, just because I didn't have enough type, really nice metal type to set it by hand. I wish I would. I wish I did, because I really wanted to do that. So I went polymer on that. And then of course the incredible border. So this was a great experience. I have to say that it was great working with Tony, and of course Casey. Casey's the guy that got me into letterpress many years back. And it's wonderful to be around these guys that are so close. And so that's my story, and there it is. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Virgil, very, very much. Okay, so I think what I'm going to do, Dory, maybe you can help me get this out there, is that I will turn this, or actually kind of release the PDF to you, maybe, or I'll post it somewhere, and then maybe you can send it out for a link if anybody wants to see it again with all the other work. That'd be good. Okay, so I think now I'm going to do the dueling Vandercooks. So why don't we switch to, I'm going to move the laptop over here. How does that look?
Great. We can see both presses clearly. All good.
Okay, so a little bit about my my studio. This used to be my game room back when we had boys here, and so first part of my letterpress career, my SP20 that I got from, this came out of San Diego, and it was originally housed at the newspaper in Berkeley, California. And then this one over here, the Universal One, it was out of a type house in New York. But the SP20 was out in the garage forever. And it was just not very much fun letterpressing out in the middle of the Texas summer out there. So my wife graciously agreed to let me knock two doors in the wall right over there, and had somebody bring those in, and so now I can print in acclimated air for sure. And so what I thought I would do, and you know, the one thing about being on kind of in lockdown, if you will, is it kind of not forced me, but really allowed me to do something that I've never done before, and that's the hand bray things, and just kind of print a bunch of different things just so I can go through the process. So a year ago or something, it was for, I gave a little talk at Texas A&M Commerce at Virgil, and you see that okay? I created this poster for that. Big type is the boss, and it says, unless you use small type, then it's the boss. And so it's just kind of talks to being a practical, creative person, that you got to use what you have to use and make it do what it needs to do. And so what I did, I reset this up on these two presses with the big A. This is a 22-inch A, if you will. So I don't have the whole alphabet, but that's the only one I have that. And so, and then I've got the other part of it on the universal over here, and I just thought I would demonstrate using both presses for one job. And a really interesting thing, at least to me, you guys may have done this many times, is I'm printing on an actual 40-inch sheet. And so the maximum sheet on the SP20 is 28 inches, and something short of 24 over here. And so it's if you do the math right, you can make it work. So I've got this this A over here. I've already printed the manacle. So I'm going to take my phone over here. Is this going to work like this, Dory? Like we talked about yesterday, maybe?
Yep. Yep.
Maybe. Hold on, I'll adjust that.
So if you'd like to see detail of what Tony's doing, you can click on
How's
the
that look?
phone,
Good?
and that'll give you the detailed view, or his computer will give you the wide view with both of the presses in view.
So I have some ink on the right now. I'm just going to go over this small piece of type at the bottom. We'll see what this first looks is manually cranked, so it won't be very noisy, but hold on. So this is the 40-inch sheet, and I've already got the manacle printed on that. This was actually done on my laser too. Scott Moore helped me figure that out, and he's been a great friend and an incredible resource as well. So we're just going to print two. So I think all of you maybe have worked at Vandercook. If not, you know that there's a pedal down here which raises the gripper system on this. Slide the paper in. There's 3 points of contact. You have a side guide. Can you see that? Yeah, you can. And then there's there's 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 5 grippers on the SP20 because it can take a 19.5-inch sheet in width. So there's plenty there. It's a little bit different. All right, so we're going to crank this thing and see what happens here. Ready? Very nice. Okay, so I purposely under-inked the A because I want it to be a lot more subtle than, so that when the black overprints it, it'll still be like that. Can you see that okay?
Yeah, looks great.
So we'll run one more, and then we'll have two for over here. We put a little bit of ink on. Check out that Brayer.
Tony, what size Brayer is
this
that?
A is so big that. What's that?
What size
What kind of
Brayer is
Brayer?
that?
Oh, I don't know. It's an aluminum handle.
What a big Brayer.
Anybody recognize that?
Jason,
My, what,
like that?
the better to roll you with.
Right?
I know Vandercook made those, Tony. I have one. I
Oh, is
have,
that right?
I have an oversized, I'll go grab it. I have an oversized comical one. I'll show you.
Okay.
Nice.
This is one of those times when I wish Ray Nichols was here because he's a master Brayer.
I tend to think Jill is the master Brayer.
The gentleman and a scholar, Ray.
I like
Okay.
to share the wealth.
You're a good man.
Jill is sitting right here next to me, so I'm being careful.
Okay, here we go. There she is. Hey, Jill. All right, anybody want to roll this? All right, let's kick the tire and light the fire. All right. So the SP20 cylinder is so big that getting it off of the cylinder at the end is really not too bad because you can control the sheet a lot better than you'll see over there on the Universal One that's has a smaller cylinder, and so you have to do some things differently. But that looks pretty good, doesn't it?
Looks great.
That's actually Dayglow blue, just not a lot of it. Okay, so we're going to go over here. Now the Universal, it's like Ray and Jill's. It's motorized, so it's going to be a little bit noisy. Let me go turn this one over here too. How's that?
Good view.
Okay, it's got the same gripper system, just not as many of them up here. So we just ran this one. Let me fix this phone real quick. I'm sorry.
Tony, while you're doing that, Casey's asking if you need to kickstart your press.
If what?
If you need to kickstart your press.
Yeah, really. We're gonna do it like this.
Jill likes those big red dots back in the corner of your studio.
Yeah, that's a fine print back there. Okay, here we go. I'm gonna turn it on. How's that sound?
I don't even hear it.
Can't even hear it.
Yeah.
You have a silencer on that? You have a
Sure
silencer
it's
on that?
on?
Silencer? Yeah, I've got a muffler. I've got a muffler on it. All right, here we go. So obviously at the end of the here you have the situation you guys all know where you got to be careful that you don't pull the sheet out and across the across your form. And so what I do is I take another piece of paper and I just put it in here like this, and then you can take it out. It needs some more ink, but it looks pretty good. What do you think?
It's a great.
So why aren't you just using the tapes?
What's that,
Tony,
Ray?
Why aren't you using the tape and just roll it back?
Well, I'd be afraid that the tapes would hold it because the printing runs would run back up underneath the sheet like this, and I would think it would offset, right? Maybe we'll try it on this one, or maybe I'll try it off camera. But let's print that other one real quick. Hey Ray, why don't you talk about the tapes real quick while I'm setting this up?
They're really long, thin. What about them? What would you say about tapes?
How do tapes work for those of us that aren't familiar with Vandercook's?
Well, you're gonna see it right here. You just need to get them on the outside of your tape.
Right. Let's see how much room I have here. I'll go ahead and set them up and we'll see what happens.
My guess is typically the piece of paper will slightly bow coming off of the type, and it would keep it loose.
Okay, we'll see.
You just got to grab it coming back because you got a lot of extra paper there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, see, the problem is I don't know if I'll be able to get it out of there.
It'll just be out
We'll
of it
see.
when you get it back.
Yeah, it won't be tangled up in it.
It'll just be, you'll just roll it back and it'll just lay down for you.
See, I knew I was going to get a workshop out of this.
Glad you're not wearing a necktie.
Do what?
I'm glad you're not wearing a necktie, Tony.
Do you have a ruler up there?
I do.
Okay.
Smart guy told me that.
He must have been smart.
Okay, I'm going to run this down. See what that looks like.
Let's see what happens.
I'm on a trip. All right, we're going to try this.
You
I'm
might-
going to put some more ink on it, though.
Hey, Tony, you might want to run it through on manual.
Sir?
You got to grab it when if you're going to run down and come back, if you got it on cycle.
No,
you
I
gotta
do
make
not.
sure you grab that end of that piece,
Right.
or put it on manual, run it all the way down, and then just you can grab it and run it back.
Right, yeah. I have it on manual right now.
Okay. That strikes me as being the easier way.
No
Yeah.
pressure, Tony.
Sir?
No pressure.
Yeah, really. I'm glad I'm amongst friends.
Tony, is the motor running on that press?
Not right now, it's not.
Okay, because University of Indianapolis got the same press and it had something inside and it screamed so loud you had to wear headphones and they fixed it. But I'm just curious what a real one sounds like before I comment. So
All right.
later on, whenever you run it, I'll listen.
There's a lot of tap in that form.
You need a nice two-handed brayer.
Jill, while he's doing that, do you have any tips for using a hand brayer since you are the master of hand braying?
Jill? Okay, we're gonna run it. We'll see what these tapes do.
Jill, you were on mute. I'm sorry, we didn't hear your tips. Maybe you'll give them to us in a bit.
Okay, ready? Okay, Scott, here we go.
Just come back, right?
I think I warned you pretty well about grabbing that thing.
Yes, sir, you did. So it did come. See, that's what I was talking about right there, right where it came back and hit the E up here is printing again. But yeah, that would have worked. Can you see that?
Uh-huh.
So there we did, 40-inch sheet on a couple of Vandercooks. So that was pretty fun. Thanks to everybody.
Nice.
Okay, how much time we have? Oh, we're way over time. No, we're not. We're in pretty good shape, right?
You have about 8 minutes before we hit our happiest hour. Yep.
Okay. So I think now we were going to take a look at, maybe I was going to show you some of the type and some of the borders that I have. So I'm going to take this. I need to turn this around, Dory.
Uh-huh. Yep. You hit the camera that has the whirling arrows. Should be your top left.
Yep.
There you go.
There we go. There we go. So a quick tour. Every studio should have a Coke machine. And there's that's a 16 by 20 Boss laser. And I've already told you about the Universal one. Kind of a neat thing about the Universal, you guys all know this one in particular has an adjustable bed. Pretty cool. Very grateful. There's this is a 1894 Chandler and Price. Right? Little clamshell. That's actually made in Japan.
Neat.
Don't tell anybody. SP20.
Do you use your platen presses
Yes.
much, or do you use most of your cylinder presses? Which do you
Yeah, mostly the Vandercook cylinder presses. They're just so friendly.
Yeah.
Here's a couple of the prints that I did with some other colors. What do you guys think?
I like that orange.
Yeah. A little Halloween-y. Okay. We'll take a quick look. Sorry. So I have this really nifty paper cabinet right here that kind of serves both of the presses. So I turn the top shelf into kind of an inking station, and then that way I can just like slide that bad boy right out of the way, which is pretty fun. Okay, here's a drawer of some borders that I've acquired. These are really cool. This is a Tubbs border right there. A pretty common Mineola. And then a Roman flame. And I'm thinking that one of these three is going to be on the next border relay. I'm not sure which one. I'm going to take some votes. Here is a really nice Vanderberg set, French Clarendon, that I had. This is actually a specimen sheet that John Horn printed, and he's sticking out. John Horn's a really great guy. He really helped me early on in understanding letterpress like that. He's a pretty good guy. Let's see. Here's some 34 line. I don't know what. Anybody recognize that?
Mm-mm. Mitchell's really good about.
Here's some big hand carved type. Oh yeah, maybe I'll send
Yeah,
that.
I don't know if Mitchell's on,
This
but
was some
he's
hand.
really good.
All right. My son and daughter-in-law actually used that to create that poster right there.
I do love big type myself.
Yes, sir. This is a page. Actually, the old stuff is page. The newer stuff, you'll find this interesting. Casey Mccarty just spoke. Casey, back before I had my my laser, he did all this on his CNC router, but it's 9 1/8 inches, 660 points. Pretty sweet. And actually, I used that to print this Candy Fest poster right there, which was turned out really well. It's a big type. Here's a big set of Cooper numerals. Pretty cool. And then over here, just real quick, I'll show you just a couple of more borders that I have. This looks like some Art Deco, right?
Yep, Art Deco.
Here's a really full set of star bars. Kind of unique close-up of those. Really pretty and ornate, aren't they?
What's your address again, Tony?
And you have the corner
Box 5. Yeah, let's see. Yeah.
And when do you go in
This is
shopping?
an interesting.
Tony, could you tell us a little bit more about using a laser cutter to print sorts?
Well, I could. Everything that I learned, Dory, I learned from Scott Moore. And Scott, I don't know if you want to take a couple of minutes and just talk about that function and that craft that you are so gifted with. Do you want to do that for a few minutes?
Yeah, if you don't mind. I don't want to run you out of time.
No, sir. I'm going to continue to show these cases, and why don't you just talk?
Yeah, I took a couple screenshots already there to try and make some off of. One of the things I did was I wanted to learn to make sorts. So 10 years ago when I first started doing this, I made a lot of sorts with my pantograph and made the patterns though in Illustrator based off of specimen books, and made vinyl sign machine and then hand worked it. Once I got a laser, it completely changed what I could do. I have a year's wait for people to get replacement letters right now and sorts. And as Dave Pete always says, and John Horn, do you want to make type or do you want to make slabs? What do you want to make, new type, or do you want to make replacement letters? So I love making the replacement letters. I've learned so much math, typography math. There's some of mine, and I like to share that with people. It's been very, very helpful. You do have to consider when you're doing replacement letters that the laser has a side loss. In other words, if you look at the dashes there he has up, you lose 0.03 of an inch, 0.03 or about a half a point off of the sides from the side heat of the laser. And so you have to go in. Nick Sherman taught me how to do an optical pattern, and you have to go in and figure what am I going to lose to the laser heat, especially fine line values. And a lot of times to do inlay or to do outline or inline and texture and shading, I was going to try and do them with stamping, and the laser has completely opened that up to cross-hatching and super fine lines. I do a lot of face grain and side grain because I can make it. Brad Vetter, as an example, is the leader in using the plywood, and he doesn't go very deep. I had to figure out how deep to strike is, 35 thousandths like monotype, and Brad Vetter does 10 thousandths deep, barely goes through. One of the first things I tried to reproduce was what Tony's showing you right now. that font, and he's just been amazing to me how he applies and what he learns and how to use the laser. He gets the most out of this laser. But replacement letters are nice. But you have to be kind of picky, because sometimes people want a lot of replacement letters, like maybe 50 or 60 different fonts worth of missing 2 or 3 letters. So I kind of have to restrict them. But the laser has opened up a whole world of making replacement letters.
Scott, if somebody was interested in learning more about this skill, where would you suggest they start?
Laser or making replacement letters?
Probably laser, because I would think they would need to learn about the laser first before they can.
I teach laser making workshops at colleges and book art centers and help people. In fact, I had 3 this summer that were scheduled that aren't there anymore.
Okay.
But again, I have handouts. I'll send anyone the handouts who wants it. Safety and rules and examples of how to do things. But again, just look at that beautiful border he's made and how he compensated for the loss. And you learn and get good at it. The laser opens up an entire world. Anything you can engrave, you can make laser. Because
how would people reach out to you, Scott? Do you have an email address or website?
Yeah, you can go to my email, which is morewoodtype@gmail.com, or you can go to my business site, which is scott@morewoodtype, OORE woodtype.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll share and help anyone who wants to learn. And almost every college and book art center nowadays have at least one laser, if not many lasers available. Everything down from 40 watts all the way up to 120 watts. Mine's a 90, but most people have a 60. And it's more than, and especially if you're doing big letters on side grain, you don't have to worry about the detail breaking out. Also, I've been using the laser for this last year to do stack type, which is where you take 3/4 inch MDF from Home Depot or Lowe's and add 3mm Baltic birch, or Brad Vetter does Masonite, 1/8 inch tempered hardboard, cut out big 60 line letters, 72 line font. He does whole fonts. And you spray glue and stick it down to 3/4 inch MDF. And then on the very bottom, you put a piece of chipboard. And chipboard comes in 4 different thicknesses. You want the medium, which is 42 thousandths, and it brings you up to 915. Then if you use Titebond 2 glue and you squish it in a book press, you get right at 918. And you can make full fonts for, $12. I've got a big 60 line full font done with MDF, which is the brown stuff. And Home Depot and Lowe's, when I did a micrometer, was very accurate. So I will send you the handouts for that too. I do that to people who want to know about how to do stacked type. And that's what I think Tony would, after seeing his beautiful big type and his skills, it's a great way to get a huge font for Harley's, just a song.
Okay, Scott. Hey, why don't you send that to me, Scott?
I did.
To people.
Hang on, Tony. I think Mitchell has a question.
Yes, that one you sent me today. I have it.
Okay.
Okay, Dory, I think that's it. Does anybody have any questions or anything about what they saw today, or?
Yeah, Mitchell has a question.
Anything?
Not so much a question. I just wanted to jump in and say if people are looking for access to laser cutting devices, check out your local makerspace. It's a pretty standard piece of equipment for makerspaces, and a lot of larger, medium large cities have one or two of those things going.
That's where I learned. I went to try and make a pattern and went, oh my goodness, and it's completely changed my whole attitude about making type and how to use the laser. I use it 90% of the time now instead of my pantograph.
Wow.
And I have a quick, easy question. Dory, who are you?
Oh,
You can introduce yourself. I don't know who you are.
I'm so sorry about that. My name is Dory. I have a small studio in Houston called Sidetrack Press. I'm new to the print world. I actually just purchased my first press earlier this year and have been making the most of this quarantine time to try and gather as much information as I can and get to know as many people in this field as possible. So it's been a real joy to help organize these Zoom talks and get to meet so many folks through it.
if you'll send me your contact information or your mailing address, I'll send you a hello box of free wood type.
Oh, thank you, Scott. I really appreciate that.
I do that all the time.
Absolutely. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Did anybody have any other questions for Tony or maybe for Scott?
I have a question for Scott real quick on laser, and then I want to ask Tony a question. Hey, Scott, so when you're cutting the Masonite, does that hold up pretty well with the laser? Just like any of the wood? Does it still have crisp?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. The tempered Masonite is, for those of you who aren't old enough, is now called tempered hardboard, and they sell it at Home Depot and Lowe's in 2 foot by 4 foot pieces. It's very accurate to be 1/8 of an inch. And the back of it's slightly textured so it can glue down better, but it's nice. It's got a little bit of wax on it, and that's what Brad Vetter taught me. And so when you spray it with shellac, not much absorbs into the Masonite. No, I think the last person I made stack type fours run was 3,000 copies. It's good for big things. It's not good for 4-line type, but it's great for inch and above and big slabs and interesting art. You can make really neat, like or I can't remember the word I want to. You can make ornaments and stars and pointers, and it's nice because, but yeah, the Masonite actually is sealed, so it doesn't. You get no wood grain off of it. On the Baltic birch, 1/8 inch Baltic birch, which is 3 millimeters, you do get the wood grain. But when we spray 2 coats of bullseye shellac on it, and then you lap it a little bit on some 500 grit sandpaper, it prints just like it's side grain maple.
Do you need to put shellac on the hardboard because it already has that wax coat on it?
Yes, we do spray shellac on. You do it upside down first, and you do the chipboard on the bottom, and then you flip it over and you spray the top from all 4 sides. And again, the shellac dries within 15-20 seconds. What you're actually sealing is you're sealing the moisture content of the MDF in, so it doesn't absorb ink, it doesn't absorb moisture. And also, when you go to clean the type, it doesn't let the type stick to the counters and things, the ink stick to the counters and things. But no, yeah, I would still spray. You spray all 4 sides, 4 different directions, and you're done. Email me and I'll send you the handouts. But it's really changed what I do. I had all these workshops to pantograph and make stack type, and you can make whole fonts.
Okay, question for Tony real quick. Hey, Tony, how
Yes.
often do you print on both presses? You set up a form on one press to set up a form on another. Is that something that you actively do, or just on posters, these longer posters? Did you say that poster was only 20 inches long? Because it's longer than that, right?
40 inches long.
40.
So I got 2 out of a 26 by 40 sheet, just busted it in half, and then I printed that. But so the answer is no, I've never done that prior to Dory asking me to host something. So this was kind of new for me too, but it turned out pretty well. So typically I keep my Universal 1 set up for polymer, and I do regular wood type and metal type on the SB20. Yeah. All right, Dory, I think we're done. Everybody, my good friend Jason Wedekind, you're a good man.
So
I appreciate everybody.
Oh, hang on. I think Jason's showing us his giant Brayer.
check this out. So this is a Vandercook Brayer, Tony, and I had a local roller company recover it.
Right.
All I had was the frame, and they actually put ball bearing trucks in there. So
Wow.
like bends real quick. And it's super freaking heavy. But the dude made it larger than the stops.
Oh, no.
Like, well, what the hell am I going to do with that? And Kyle from Baltimore Press I was going to grind it down. And Kyle was like, don't do that. Imagine how much more travel you get, like having it bust out last year.
Oh, yeah.
So we made this handy dandy roller holder. So like
Nice.
Can't put it on its side; it'll flatten out. So I thought you guys would get a kick out of that.
Oh yeah.
Jason, do you remember the name of the local roller company? Because I know people are always looking for good roller vendors.
Yeah, it's called H&S. If you email me, I can send you the info.
Cool.
Or I can put it in the chat. I'll put it in the chat right now.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, they're cool.
And
They also made new trucks for my adjustable bearings on the CMP, but they cost just as much as new rollers.
They used to charge $5 for them back in the day.
if you know of anyone tearing down a big press, like a news press, all the roller bearings on it, all the inking and the tension bearings make beautiful two-handed, 14-inch wide Brayers. And I could say with Jason, the bearings are in there. So the last time I helped someone, I salvaged, I think, 14 of them off of it. And they've been very nice to use for other people to fix things and make new rollers.
Oops, hold on.
That's actually what I'll do. I have a 14-inch roller, and I just put handles on the end because I already had the bearings in them, and I roll big forms with it. It's beautiful. Beats the heck out of my 8-inch Brayer. Going back and forth all the time.
Well, this is great. Thank you guys so much for sharing those resources. What I'll do is if you put something in the chat that's a resource, or if you mentioned a resource, I'll make sure that when we repost this to YouTube that I put those in the show notes so that way you can find it really easily. And with that, we'll go ahead and wrap it up for today. Thank you so much, Tony, for showing us your awesome space. And I've really gotten a kick out of learning about the border relay in particular. It's been so inspiring to see the work that you're doing collectively. So thank you very much for sharing that with us. And we will sign off for the day. Just a friendly reminder that we do classes most Thursdays. So if you'd like to know the schedule, check out the Letterpress Facebook page, and that's where I'm posting events. But thank you so much for your time. And thank you again, Tony. We'll see you later.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. That was great.
Thanks, Jason. Appreciate you showing up.